why are we here? What's life all about? Is God really real? Or is there some doubt? Well, tonight we're going to sort it all out. For tonight, it's the meaning of life.
Hello YouTube. For this particular video, I will be discussing, among other things, reasons why I think the biblical flood most likely didn't occur as biblical literalists and creationists describe it. Now, this isn't a comprehensive list of reasons by any means, but the ones that I found the most compelling overall. This video did take a while to finish because I wanted to get the things as right as possible with the various reasons I was going to bring up. In the previous video of this series, I had brought up the possibility that the serpent in the garden could likely have been the follower or representative of a snake worship cult. Then after the video was done, I found out some other info I wish I had brought up within the video itself. That being said, I feel confident this is as well laid out as I could possibly get it. I'm not a scientist by profession, nor do I have any sort of science degree, except for a minor in psychology, but I think for this video it doesn't really qualify. So I'll be relying on the work of archaeologists, geologists, paleoclimatologists, etc. That I could find on Google. Before I get into the flood, I will briefly touch on the stories of Cain and Abel and the, quote, sons of God coming from on high to impregnate human females. We are not told in Genesis specifically what these, quote, sons of God are. We're told that there were giants in the earth, but we are not told if it's the sons of God themselves or their offspring, or perhaps both, that are considered the giants. Often the sons of God are described as angels and their offspring described as giants by modern Christians. However, there are other possibilities. The sons of God could also have been a royal priestly class descended from a mountainous region north of Canaan or Mesopotamia, who were perhaps taller than the natives, and in that case their children would have been the result of their having been interbred with the natives of that land. These children were described as, quote, mighty men of old, men of renown, in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. It would make sense, therefore, that their fathers had taken control of the local areas of Mesopotamia and established themselves as kings by divine right. Hence, they literally would have been the sons of God. I don't think this is completely far-fetched either, as the kings of Egypt themselves used their claims that they were descended from a god, usually Ra, as the basis for rulership. Now I'll get into the story of Cain and Abel for a bit. The story of Cain and Abel was likely a local Canaanite legend about two brothers who, in my opinion, represented two sides of Canaanite society. Abel represented the pastoralists living in the hill country who would later become the Israelites, while Cain represented agricultural societies of the plains which developed into Canaanite cities. These two societies were clearly interdependent, but of course tension between them must surely have existed and grown with time. According to the book The Bible Unearthed, nomads needed the marketplace of settled villages in order to obtain grain and other agricultural products, while farmers are dependent on the nomads for a regular supply of meat, dairy products, and hides. However, the two sides of the exchange are not entirely equal. Villagers can rely on their own produce for survival, while pastoral nomads cannot exist entirely on the products of their herds. When grain cannot be obtained in exchange for animal products, the pastoral nomads are forced to produce it for themselves. Now, there were three waves of settlement in the highlands of Canaan, which later became Israel. The first wave started as early as 3500 BC, and the third wave ended around 900 BC. The agricultural evidence in the first two waves shows how the pastoral groups settled in the area and then dispersed and took up a nomadic lifestyle again. The evidence in the third wave of settlement showed how more permanent settlement and population growth was made possible by more extensive use of the agricultural potential of the region. Thus, the story of Cain and Abel could be literal on the one hand, but it's just as likely to represent a conflict between an agricultural and a pastoral group, or more symbolically represents a perceived betrayal of pastoralists and the pastoral way of life by those who practiced agriculture. Now I'll turn my attention to the main topic of this video, why Noah's flood didn't happen as described in the Bible. First, I'll start with the physical evidence of the ark. The short answer is, there is no evidence outside the Bible. The second topic I wish to bring up is one that is discussed on many skeptic blogs and videos pertaining to the flood: all the extra water. In order to cover the entire earth with water up to the tallest mountain, as asserted by many modern creationists, a lot more water than is currently on the earth would be required. According to the USGS.gov Water Science School page, all the water on Earth, including liquid, ice, and vapor, would fit into a sphere of 332,500,000 cubic miles. A single cubic mile of water would have about 1.1 trillion gallons of water in it. The sphere of all the water on Earth would have 366 million trillion gallons of water in it, or 1,385,920,458 cubic kilometers. That is all the water on Earth. Here is an estimate of the amount of water needed to flood the entire Earth. First, we'll start with the volume of Earth as a perfect sphere, the formula for which is shown on the screen, using the radius of the Earth in kilometers. We plug the numbers into the formula and we get 1.079 trillion cubic kilometers. Next, we compute the volume of the sphere plus the height of Mount Everest, 6,371 kilometers plus 8.85 kilometers, which equals 6,379.85 kilometers. We plug this new number into the formula and we get 1.084 trillion cubic kilometers. We subtract the perfect sphere amount from the volume plus the height of Mount Everest, and we get 4.5 billion cubic kilometers, and then we subtract the number of cubic kilometers of water actually on Earth, and we get 3.12 billion more cubic kilometers of water than is currently on planet Earth. Now, the people of the region likely did not know Mount Everest existed, so we'll compute the height of Mount Ararat for comparison. The height of Mount Ararat is 5,137 meters, or 5.137 kilometers. We add that to the radius of the Earth, and we get 6,376.137 kilometers. We plug that into the formula, and we wind up with 1.082 trillion cubic kilometers. We subtract the amount for the perfect sphere, and then subtract the amount of water actually on Earth, and we wind up with 1.2 billion cubic kilometers, or 328 million trillion more gallons than what is presently on planet Earth. It's still quite a bit more water, but it's a little more reasonable than the amount we got for Everest. And in spite of what some creationists may assert to the contrary, there is no evidence for a global flood in sedimentary deposits around the world.
The scientific quest for traces of the biblical global flood that Noah, his family, and the animals in the ark survived actually began more than 150 years ago. But geologist Ian Plimer, after searching across continents, sometimes in the most extreme weather conditions, has found very little evidence.
A great flood would leave a signature. It would be a very, very large signature apparent all over the world. There is no such signature. There is no evidence. In fact, there is only overwhelming evidence to the contrary.
The third topic I wish to bring up is food. How was Noah able to get enough food to feed not only himself and his family, but also all the animals and store it all away on the ark? How could Noah be sure the dedicated meat eaters of the group wouldn't break out and attack each other or the other animals? Keep in mind he did not use metal on the boat. Even if he fed whatever fish from the sea that survived the mixing of salt and fresh water to the dedicated meat eaters of the group, that still does not explain him being able to keep the meat eaters under control or have or grow enough food to feed all the herbivores. Even if he grew the food, how would those plants get enough sunlight? It would be impossible for him to plant anything on the lower decks, as there was no artificial light and there was no sunlight to filter through. And it would have been difficult to plant anything on the upper deck with all the rainwater hitting him and the plants. Now, he could have stored dried food like wheat and other foodstuffs, but he would have had to have known exactly how much food all these animals would have needed, even animals he had likely never even seen before, if we are to believe what modern creationists today say. The Bible says in chapter 6, verse 21, "And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be food for thee and for them." Now when it comes to where and how Noah got his food, the Bible is completely silent. We don't really know. Now I'm going to present some more math. An elephant, for example, would require between 300 and 500 pounds of food every day, which, if we use the lower amount, would be about 45,000 pounds of food for one elephant for the entirety of the trip on the ark. Here are some less extreme examples. A giraffe can eat between 60 and 75 pounds a day. If we use the lower amount again, we get 9,000 pounds of plant matter for one giraffe. One species of rhino usually eats about 110 pounds a day. Taking this amount, we get 16,500 pounds of plant matter for one rhino. Not to mention the other creatures with specialized diets that Noah would have had to have catered to. Hummingbirds live off of flower nectar. Koalas only eat leaves off of eucalyptus plants. And, of course, we have insectivores. So Noah would have had to have figured out how to get a plant not native to his area, and enough of it to last 150 days to feed the koalas, as well as enough flowers with enough nectar to feed the hummingbirds, and we have already established he could not have grown the flowers. And also enough insects to not only breed, but also provide a substantial food source for the insectivores. But getting insects would have been the least of Noah's worries.